Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. It's my pleasure, proud privilege to welcome all of you to this very important conclave on supply chain and logistics, about which Mr. Khub Chandani, the co-founder, and Ravneet have talked about, initiated it. I'm going to be spending a little more time in this so-called inaugural address about the challenges which the industry as a whole is currently facing. Yes, the growth has been predicted that by 2030 we would have reached this $400 billion industry where it would have gone across. Certainly, but I think what we are seeing currently is upending of a lot of things which had been projected of the global growth, global trade, industry growth. All those things we need to now reckon with. And I'm referring to something which is not created by us, but certainly we may have contributed to it, the global geopolitical situation. Let's look at where we stand. Last 3 years, and we are the Ukraine-Russia war. I'm sorry. Just glass. There has been now the war has entered the fourth year, and we don't know when it would end and how it would end. As if that weren't enough, we've now we are seeing the second major configuration in the Middle East, starting first with Israel and Gaza, and thereafter Israel scaling it up to bombing. Now it's reached absolutely another level with with Iran also involved, and virtually an outright war having started 6 days ago between them, and one doesn't know. And it's not a minor, I would just caution that it's a major conflict which we are seeing, something of the kind which we hadn't seen for a long time, and after the Vietnam War, which ended way back. Then, of course, when I said we've also probably added to the tension the India-Pakistan war recently, which we have gone through. Technically, we still remain at war with Pakistan. The Operation Sindoor hasn't been called off. But the point I'm just trying to make is that, and it's a documented one, that since 1946, that's the 1945, the World War ended, the bombing, etc., of Japan, Hiroshima and Nagasaki took place in August. Thereafter, we have never seen a year, 80 years now, with as many conflicts, small and big, are taking place around the world as in the current year, 2025. And each one of them is of consequence. Consequence in terms of what we are discussing today, supply chain and logistics. The war has upset, or these wars have upset the supply sources. These have upset transportation routes. You can't go through the Red Sea, you can't go through the Black Sea on the Russian-Ukraine side, and the Gulf of Hormuz is something which any time can be an issue for us of concern, greater concern than we have today. I would also say that it is not merely the supply chains being affected by geopolitical factors as we've seen, but we are also seeing the economic slowdown in the world, which is likely to be a consequence. Now, nobody denies it that, yes, Mr. Trump may be leading the Make America Great campaign. So MAGA, he might be like any other patriotic person, talk about first America, America first, etc., like we also do. But when America behaves in a particular manner, the US, the impact of it is huge, and it spreads across the globe, it spreads across the industry. The expectation is that any moment there could be a recession setting out in the global economy, starting with the US itself. We have the US would see if the tariff war doesn't end amicably, if the so-called the non-tariff barriers do not kind of become larger than they are already being talked about, the it's starting with inflation, and inflation then slowing down the economies because the purchasing power as well as the investment, the money, resources available to invest are going to be diverted elsewhere. And that's a cause to worry. We have seen in the past the 1930s depression, the last Great Depression as it's called. It was low prices, very low growth. This time it could be a bit different, that it will be high inflation because of scarcity of goods, upsetting of supply chains, higher logistic costs, etc., and transaction costs. But at the same time, the high costs would not see a greater demand for people to invest. Usually, a little bit of inflation is always welcomed. All economists will tell you. So it stimulates demand. People want to then put money. But in this particular case, the way we are going forward geopolitically, it could be much worse, that it will be high inflation hitting the pocket, but you are not able to get the goods to the extent the value of the goods won't be what you are really spending. Again, impact trade. See, what are we seeing now? Somebody who had to be persuaded to join the WTO, believe in free trade, was China. China was a closed economy for most of its history. It joined the WTO only in 2001, and with great amount of trepidation in minds of people, how will China behave? Here was the United States talking about free trade, and its allies, the Western world and many others, developed countries talking about it. And now what do we see? Totally to the contrary. The stances have changed. Who is the protagonist of free trade? China. Who is opposing it? The Western world. The Western world led by the US, and consequence being seen on the other industrialized countries, because they have to protect themselves against the kind of tariff and the non-tariff barriers the President Trump is talking about. It worries me that we could well be seeing a rate of growth of the world which has been predicted by the World Bank, IMF, as well as the 34 rich countries club called the OECD, based in Paris. Their prediction is the GDP growth of being under 3% of the world this year. 2.7 to be precise is what their prediction is. And the world trade, which had grown by 6% in between 2000 and 2010, 6% plus, by 5 plus during 2010 to 2020s, and by about 4% in the early 20s, would correspondingly reduce drastically to about 3.2%. the at the end of the day, what is happening in the world is something which is going to be a worrisome for the industry, which all of you represent and which is being inaugurated today. And I would only end by saying that in India, we have been able to reduce the transaction costs for trading considerably by about what used to be 14% of the GDP 6 or 7 years ago is now reportedly 9 to 10%. A lot of contribution would have come from the industry. A lot of contribution has come from, I would say, the huge infrastructure expenditure which has been led by the union government and the state governments. Private sector has been a little behind in putting capital formation in the last 10 years. That's what, or in infrastructure per se. But at the same time, so-called the Gati Shakti program, which the Prime Minister himself monitors. And the monitoring is not merely of public sector projects, but even private sector. It's not only of central government projects, but even the large state government projects. So these kind of things are being, at least we are in the right direction, reducing the overall costs, but if the volumes reduce, we can do very little about it. And maybe the fixed cost itself will take the per unit cost upwards rather than rationalize or optimize it. Finally, I would just like to refer to saying that the whole industry, and you know it far better than I would or anyone else in the room, that technology, which is now going to be at the helm of optimizing transportation, logistics, sourcing, that is something which continues to be unevenly made available to the world. It is still being monopolized. It is still being kind of kept with the inventor, kept with the Western world, where most of the innovations take place. And that is something which we need to worry about, how to be able to make technology is more easily available to the rest of the world. And when I talk about rest of the world, I'm talking about 50% or 55% of the GDP of the world is now from the developing countries. China still wants to call itself a developing country. China refuses to be clubbed and be called a developed country. So obviously their contribution is there, but so is, we need to be concerned how the rationalization of this industry, optimization industry would take place with such an attitude being adopted by the inventors and the people who have made the kind of cornered the technology of the world. With that, let me end and wish you all a great day where you would find stimulating conversations. We will hold stimulating conversations and you would benefit from interaction with one another. Thank you very much.